What is the best sandwich?
Is that honestly the question? Oh. You said it. Okay.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
we start low.
Yeah.
It gets much tougher.
Oh, good. The best sandwich.
What is the best sandwich?
Well, I love a salad sandwich.
There are faces in cinema that seem to belong to another realm, untouched by time, framed by a glow that feels both real and unreachable. Nicole Kidman is one of those faces. She is not merely an actress. She is a living contradiction. A woman who conquered Hollywood with her ethereal beauty, yet spent decades searching for peace within herself. To the world, she is the Oscar-winning star of Moulin Rouge and The Hours, a cinematic goddess whose elegance and artistry define modern acting. But behind that poised smile lies a life shaped by loss, isolation, and the endless pursuit of meaning in a world that worships illusion. Nicole Kidman's story is one of duality, of golden lights and hidden shadows. Born under the soft glow of Honolulu's sun, raised in the quiet suburbs of Sydney, she seemed destined for greatness from the start. Yet beneath the glamour and red carpets, Nicole's journey reveals a far deeper truth, that fame, no matter how luminous, can never truly fill the quiet spaces of the soul. Hers is a life marked by both triumph and tragedy, by the haunting silence of loneliness that fame cannot cure, and by the courage it takes to keep shining through heartbreak. The camera adored her, directors worshipped her, audiences followed her every move. But few could see the girl behind the grandeur, the young woman who lost herself in the role she played and sometimes found it harder to return to who she really was. Every close-up, every trembling whisper on screen seemed to reveal a hidden fragment of Nicole's own inner world, the ache of love, the fragility of belonging, and the quiet endurance of a soul too gentle for the noise that surrounded her. In the world of Hollywood, where beauty is currency and perfection is performance, Nicole's fragility became her rebellion. Her ability to transform pain into poetry, to make audiences feel her heartbreak without ever breaking character, turned her into something more than a movie star. She became a vessel of human emotion, a mirror reflecting the hidden sorrows of millions who loved her without ever knowing her. But the question lingers, how can a woman who seems to have everything still feel incomplete? How can someone adored by millions carry the weight of invisible sorrow? Nicole's journey forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about success, that the higher the pedestal, the lonelier the view. Beneath the awards, the global fame, the picture-perfect photo shoots, lies the enduring ache of someone who has lost much and endured quietly. Her marriages, her miscarriages, her struggles with faith and motherhood, her near loss of identity in the shadow of her fame, all of these fragments piece together a portrait not of a goddess, but of a human being searching for balance in a life too large for any heart to contain. Nicole Kidman's story is not one of scandal, but of survival. It is not about falling apart, but about staying whole in a world that keeps breaking you down. Her life whispers to us about resilience, reinvention, and the silent strength of a woman who turns her tears into art. This is not just the story of an actress. This is the story of a woman who became her own masterpiece, even when the world could only see her mask. Because beneath the red carpets and golden statuettes lies the truth few dared to tell. Nicole Kidman's greatest performance has always been her survival.
Early life and family background. The making of a dreamer. Nicole Mary Kidman was born on June 20, 1967, in Honolulu, Hawaii, under a sky that seemed to promise warmth and light. Her parents, Anthony Kidman and Janelle Ann Kidman, were Australian, a psychologist and a nursing instructor, living temporarily in the United States on academic visas. From her very first breath, Nicole existed between worlds, American-born yet Australian at heart, a child destined to navigate between light and shadow, belonging everywhere and nowhere at once. When she was just a toddler, her family returned to Sydney, Australia, settling into the gentle hum of suburban life. Her father, a man of deep intellect and compassion, worked tirelessly in psychology and cancer research, while her mother became an advocate for women's rights. From them, Nicole inherited both intellect and empathy, a curious mind paired with a heart that felt too much. But even in those early years, something about her stood out, a shyness that bordered on fragility, and a quiet introspection that made her seem older than her age. As a child, she was tall, red-haired, and pale, a combination that made her feel different in a sun-soaked land of bronzed faces and golden beaches. Her classmates teased her mercilessly, calling her Storky and Ginger. What they didn't know was that every insult carved deeper into her need to disappear, or perhaps to transform. Acting became her escape, her secret rebellion against invisibility. She found refuge in the school theater, where she could be anyone but herself. Each role was a disguise, a fragile mask she wore to silence her insecurities. Her mother's work with feminist movements opened Nicole's eyes to the struggles of women in a male-dominated world. She saw how strength could exist in silence, how grace could be a weapon. But her father's sudden diagnosis with cancer during her childhood left a mark she never truly forgot. Watching him fight for his life, young Nicole learned the cruel symmetry of joy and pain, that love always carries loss within it. She once said that her drive came from a fear of losing everything. Even at 12, she understood how fragile happiness could be. In school, she excelled academically, but was painfully introverted. Her friends were few, her confidence fragile. Yet on stage, something miraculous happened. The shy, stammering girl vanished, replaced by a force of nature, expressive, raw, luminous. Teachers began to notice. Her drama instructor described her as a girl who could feel emotions she had never lived. That uncanny empathy would become the foundation of her artistry, and, paradoxically, her greatest burden. At 16, when most teenagers were struggling with identity, Nicole had already found hers in performance. She dropped out of high school to pursue acting full-time, enrolling in the Australian Theatre for Young People. Her early performances drew attention not just for her beauty, but for her intensity. There was something haunting in her eyes, the kind of sadness that could not be taught. But behind the curtain of ambition, tragedy was quietly shaping her spirit. Her father's recurring illness, her mother's long hours, and the emotional distance between her and the outside world gave her a profound loneliness she carried for years. She sought belonging not in people, but in characters. In every role she played, there was a piece of herself she could safely express, the fear of abandonment, the longing for love, the ache of being unseen. When her father finally recovered, the experience had already left its invisible scar. Nicole learned early that security was an illusion, that life could shift without warning. This awareness gave her both sensitivity and drive, but it also planted a seed of restlessness that would follow her into adulthood. In later interviews, she described her childhood as happy but tinged with melancholy. Her parents' love was unwavering, but she always felt she was chasing something intangible, a sense of peace that kept slipping through her fingers. The red-haired girl who once stood alone on a Sydney beach, staring out at the endless sea, would one day stand on the world's grandest stages. Yet the same look, distant, yearning, would never quite leave her eyes. Nicole Kidman's early years shaped her into a woman who could feel deeply and hide it perfectly. The world would come to know her as a master of transformation. But it was this childhood, this delicate dance between love and loss, that taught her how to disappear into her roles while quietly longing to be seen. Because long before Hollywood called her name, Nicole Kidman learned that the heart's most powerful performances begin in silence.
First steps, struggles, the fragile ascent. When Nicole Kidman first stepped into the uncertain world of acting, she was barely out of her teens. A tall, pale girl with a voice as delicate as her confidence and a dream far larger than the life she knew. Sydney in the 1980s was not a place where young women easily became stars. The entertainment world was dominated by men, and the roles offered to women were limited, often shallow. But Nicole carried something rare, a kind of emotional electricity that made people pause. Her ambition, though quiet, burned like a secret fire beneath her soft-spoken exterior. Her first official performance came in the Australian Christmas classic Bush Christmas, 1983. She was only 16, radiant, awkward, and already magnetic on screen. The film wasn't a global hit, but it planted a seed. For the first time, she saw her name in the credits, and with it came a realization that both thrilled and terrified her. This could be her life. Yet even as opportunities opened, the path ahead was far from smooth. In her early years, she faced a string of rejections that nearly crushed her spirit. Casting directors often dismissed her as too tall, too unusual, or too ethereal. In an era obsessed with conventional beauty, Nicole's porcelain skin and crimson hair made her stand out, but not always in the way she hoped. For months at a time, she worked odd jobs, waiting tables and cleaning to support her fledgling dream. Then came the blow that would nearly derail her journey. Her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was only 17. The world she had been building, fragile, hopeful, shimmering with promise, collapsed around her. She quit acting temporarily to care for her mother, spending nights by her bedside and days working to help the family stay afloat. "I thought I would never go back," she later admitted. "I didn't care about fame then. I just wanted my mom to live." Those months changed her. The laughter of rehearsals, the lights of stage performance, they all faded into a blur of hospital corridors and the sterile smell of medicine. Nicole grew up overnight. The experience carved empathy into her bones and a deep emotional sensitivity that would one day define her greatest performances. But at the time, it left her fragile, uncertain, and afraid that her dreams were slipping away. When her mother recovered, Nicole returned to acting, but not as the same girl who had left. There was steel now beneath the softness. She joined the Australian Theatre for Young People, immersing herself in technique, script study, and the emotional psychology of her characters. Her instructors noted that she didn't simply act, she became whoever she portrayed. Every performance seemed to tap into something personal, an invisible grief, a fear, a longing that made her characters feel painfully real. Her big break came in 1989 with Dead Calm, a psychological thriller directed by Philip Noyce. Nicole played Ray Ingram, a woman stranded at sea, trapped between terror and survival. It was a role that demanded raw vulnerability and fierce strength, qualities that perfectly mirrored her own contradictions. When the film premiered, critics hailed her as the discovery of the year.
Hollywood had finally taken notice. But behind the applause, Nicole felt an ache of disbelief. She had spent years fighting rejection, family tragedy, and self-doubt. Now success felt almost too fragile to trust. Moving to Hollywood was another storm. The city dazzled and devoured in equal measure. Nicole arrived shy, polite, and intensely private, traits that didn't easily fit into the world of flashing cameras and ruthless ambition. She was often overlooked at first, the red-haired Australian girl in auditions filled with louder, brasher personalities. But every failure fueled her resolve. She studied endlessly, absorbing everything from method acting to movement training. When she finally landed roles in films like Days of Thunder, 1990, opposite Tom Cruise, it was as though fate had opened a door, but one that would lead to both love and heartbreak. The press fixated on their romance, and yet for Nicole, it was another balancing act between love and identity, between being seen and being overshadowed. In those early years, she often described herself as a work in progress. Each role, each rejection, each small triumph felt like a test, asking her whether she truly belonged in the world she was chasing. There were nights when she cried herself to sleep, too afraid to admit how lonely she was. Fame, she would later say, never filled the silence inside. But through it all, one thing remained constant: her resilience. Even when doubt whispered that she wasn't enough, she returned to set every day, her eyes burning with quiet defiance. Nicole Kidman's early struggles weren't just about breaking into acting. They were about learning to survive her own insecurities, about learning that success was not given, but built from the pieces of everything life tried to take away. And though the world would soon know her as one of cinema's great icons, these years, the fragile ascent, the heartbreak, the sleepless nights, would always be the hidden foundation of her grace.
Breakthrough moment. Becoming Nicole Kidman. Fame has a strange way of arriving, sometimes as a whisper, sometimes as an explosion. For Nicole Kidman, it came as both. One moment, she was the Australian actress with a few strong performances under her belt. The next, she was the woman Hollywood couldn't stop talking about. Yet the moment that changed everything didn't begin on a red carpet. It began in the roaring engines of Days of Thunder, 1990. She was just 23 when she landed the role of Dr. Claire Lewicki opposite Tom Cruise, the world's most bankable movie star at the time. The chemistry between them was undeniable, electric, cinematic, and, as the tabloids would soon learn, deeply real. Days of Thunder may have been marketed as a racing film, but for Nicole, it marked the beginning of a whirlwind that would define much of her early fame, a love story watched by the entire world. Within a year, she and Cruise were married, their union instantly elevated to mythic status, Hollywood's golden couple. The cameras adored them, the public celebrated them, and the studios suddenly wanted her. Yet beneath the glitter, Nicole was wrestling with an invisible question. Was the world falling in love with her or with Tom Cruise's wife? Her next films would answer that. In Billy Bathgate and Far and Away, 1991-1992, she began proving that her talent extended far beyond beauty or association. Her performances were layered with intelligence and vulnerability. She could embody elegance and anguish in a single breath. But true artistic breakthrough came with 1995's To Die For. Directed by Gus Van Sant, it cast her as Suzanne Stone, an ambitious TV weatherwoman with a chilling obsession with fame. Nicole's portrayal was biting, ironic, and terrifyingly magnetic. For the first time, critics saw her not just as a rising star, but as an artist. The Golden Globe she won for that performance wasn't just a trophy, it was liberation. It was proof that she could carry a film entirely on her own, that her name alone could draw both audiences and acclaim. The industry began to see her differently. The wife label began to fade, replaced by one far more powerful, leading lady. And yet, with success came isolation. Fame built walls around her as quickly as it opened doors. Her marriage, once a fairy tale, began to show cracks under the weight of constant attention and competing ambitions. Nicole often spoke about how surreal it felt to see her own face on magazine covers, smiling beneath headlines that had nothing to do with truth. She said, "They built a story I couldn't live inside. I started to lose sight of who I really was." But Nicole was not one to retreat. She pushed forward with ferocious discipline, diving deeper into her craft. In The Portrait of a Lady, 1996, she bared her soul as Isabel Archer, a woman suffocating under the pressures of freedom and duty, a role that felt hauntingly autobiographical. And then came Eyes Wide Shut, 1999, Stanley Kubrick's final masterpiece, where she and Tom Cruise played a couple unraveling in secrecy, jealousy, and temptation. The irony was painful. The fiction mirrored their reality. Working with Kubrick tested her in ways she hadn't known were possible. His perfectionism, the endless takes, the emotional intensity, it broke something open inside her. Nicole later described it as an awakening, both artistic and personal. When Eyes Wide Shut premiered in 1999, she was no longer merely a movie star. She had become a force, unpredictable, cerebral, and fearless in her choices. Then came Moulin Rouge, 2001, the film that transformed her from acclaimed actress to international icon. As Satine, the doomed courtesan with a heart full of love and lungs full of sorrow, Nicole shimmered under the spotlight like a dream made of diamonds and tears. Her voice trembled, her laughter echoed with pain, her eyes told a story no script could write. That performance captured the world and broke its heart. The film was nominated for 8 Academy Awards and redefined the modern musical. But while audiences wept for Satine, few realized that Nicole herself was living her own heartbreak. Just before Moulin Rouge wrapped, her marriage to Cruise imploded. Their split in 2001 stunned the world, and Nicole, though poised and graceful in public, was shattered in private. "I thought my life was over," she would later say softly. Ironically, her professional triumph coincided with her personal collapse. That cruel symmetry, success and sorrow intertwined, became the defining rhythm of her life. Yet even in heartbreak, Nicole transformed pain into art. Her breakthrough wasn't just a career milestone, it was a personal metamorphosis. It marked the death of one version of herself and the birth of another, an independent woman unafraid to break, rebuild, and rise again. She was no longer just Tom Cruise's wife. She was Nicole Kidman, the actress who turned tragedy into transcendence and whose story was only just beginning.
Peak career and achievements, the golden era of Nicole Kidman. After the heartbreak of her divorce, many expected Nicole Kidman to retreat from Hollywood, to disappear quietly, another casualty of celebrity's cruel glare. But instead, something extraordinary happened. Out of her pain, she found a strange kind of power, the freedom to redefine herself on her own terms. And what followed would be one of the most remarkable artistic resurgences in modern film history. In 2001, as Moulin Rouge lit up the world's screens, Nicole's ethereal performance as Satine earned her universal acclaim and a Golden Globe Award. The film's visual extravagance and emotional depth became the perfect stage for her rebirth. Nicole didn't just perform, she surrendered to the role, channeling her real-life heartbreak into every note, every tear. Audiences saw not just a character dying of love, they saw a woman resurrecting herself through art. Then came The Others, 2001, a psychological horror masterpiece that proved her versatility. As Grace Stewart, a mother tormented by secrets and shadows, Kidman delivered a performance both haunting and heartbreaking. The film's quiet intensity and final twist cemented her status as one of the most daring actresses of her generation. Critics hailed it as one of the finest horror performances of the modern era, subtle, cerebral, and deeply human. But her crowning moment arrived a year later in 2002 with The Hours. Transforming into author Virginia Woolf, Nicole disappeared completely beneath a prosthetic nose and a cloud of melancholy. It was not glamour that won her the Oscar, it was truth. She captured the inner war of a woman suffocated by her own mind, a creative soul drowning in despair. Her quiet gestures, her unsteady hands, her haunted eyes, all painted a portrait of genius entangled with suffering. That performance earned Nicole Kidman the Academy Award for Best Actress, making her the first Australian woman to ever win in that category. But more than an award, it was vindication, proof that she was not defined by her past, but by her craft. It felt like I was standing in the ashes of my old life, and somehow I found the courage to start again. Through the early 2000s, Nicole entered her golden era. She became the rare performer who could transcend genre, geography, and expectation. In Cold Mountain 2003, she embodied the endurance of love amid war, while Dogville 2003, Lars von Trier's experimental, brutal masterpiece, stripped away everything but her raw, aching humanity. These roles revealed her fearless appetite for risk. She was not chasing fame anymore, but truth. By mid-decade, she had built a body of work so eclectic and emotionally charged that critics began comparing her to the greats, Meryl Streep, Kate Blanchett, and Ingrid Bergman. She was now the artist's actress, respected, unpredictable, revered. Her range was staggering, from the cool, enigmatic Anna in Birth 2004, a widow haunted by a boy claiming to be her dead husband, to the elegant but troubled Isabel Eicher in The Portrait of a Lady. Nicole embodied women who lived on the edge of emotional collapse. She seemed drawn to pain, as if by understanding it, she could master it. By the late 2000s, she continued to dominate global cinema. The Interpreter, 2005, showed her as a strong political figure, while Australia, 2008, reunited her with director Baz Luhrmann, painting an epic portrait of love and survival against the outback's grandeur. Though not every film became a hit, her presence elevated them all, her name synonymous with quality and artistic integrity. She was nominated for countless awards, BAFTAs, Golden Globes, Screen Actors Guild. But what set her apart was not the trophies, but the emotional honesty she brought to every frame. Her performances were not performances at all. They were exorcisms. Each role seemed to pull something from deep within her, her insecurities, her fears, her longing for belonging. And behind the scenes, Nicole's quiet determination began shaping Hollywood itself. She became one of the few actresses to command both creative control and equal pay, a victory in an industry notorious for undervaluing women. Her company, Blossom Films, began producing thoughtful, female-driven stories like Rabbit Hole 2010, which earned her yet another Oscar nomination, and later Big Little Lies, a groundbreaking series that redefined television drama. It was during this era that Nicole Kidman solidified her greatest legacy, not merely as an actress, but as an architect of her own destiny. She had transcended the confines of fame, rebuilt her identity after heartbreak, and reclaimed her narrative, one role at a time. Her golden era wasn't just a period of professional success, it was a testament to resilience, proof that pain can become purpose. Every performance shimmered with the quiet defiance of a woman who had been broken and chose to arise. From Moulin Rouge to The Hours, from Cold Mountain to Big Little Lies, Nicole Kidman had proven something far greater than stardom, that art, when born from suffering, can heal not just the artist, but everyone who witnesses it.
Personal life and challenges. Behind the spotlight. To the public, Nicole Kidman seemed untouchable. Elegant, disciplined, endlessly graceful. She was Hollywood royalty, statuesque, articulate, and luminous on every red carpet. But behind the immaculate image was a woman who had weathered profound heartbreak, loneliness, and emotional pain that fame could never heal. Even after her Oscar triumph, Nicole's private life remained haunted by echoes of her past. Her divorce from Tom Cruise in 2001, after more than a decade together, was more than just a tabloid spectacle. It was a personal cataclysm. The two had been Hollywood's golden couple, young, beautiful, and unstoppable. But beneath the smiles and public appearances, cracks had been forming. Their marriage, strained by differing beliefs, the pressures of fame, and the inability to conceive biological children during those years, eventually fractured under the spotlight's glare. When Cruise filed for divorce, abruptly and to Nicole's shock, she later admitted that she collapsed in the street. For months, she withdrew completely, avoiding cameras, interviews, and premieres. Behind closed doors, she battled depression, the loss of her children's closeness, and the crushing loneliness that followed her public humiliation. Her two adopted children, Isabella and Connor, became estranged from her as they remained with their father, creating a silence that would last years. It was a wound that never fully closed. But Nicole, ever the survivor, chose not to let sorrow define her. Instead, she poured it into her craft, a quiet alchemy that turned grief into gold. Yet even as her career flourished, her heart carried the invisible scars of that loss. "I wanted to be a mother more than I wanted to be an actress," she once confessed. "That was always my dream." In the years following her divorce, she faced more than emotional turmoil. Behind the glamour, Nicole endured repeated miscarriages and fertility struggles, private battles that she kept hidden from the public eye. These losses, layered over her already fragile emotional state, created a haunting duality. On screen, she portrayed strength and beauty. Off-screen, she wrestled with the aching emptiness of unfulfilled motherhood. When she met Keith Urban in 2005, the Australian country music star with a kind smile and a complicated past, there was a spark of redemption. Both were wounded souls seeking peace in one another. They married in 2006, but even that union wasn't without turbulence. Urban, who battled addiction for years, entered rehab just months after their wedding. Nicole stood by him,
quietly, fiercely, proving that love for her wasn't about glamour, but endurance. Their marriage, though tested, became a sanctuary where Nicole finally found a sense of home. Together, they welcomed 2 daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, the latter born via surrogate after her continued fertility struggles. For the first time, she felt whole, yet deep down there remained a quiet melancholy. Fame had given her everything except simplicity. Even in her happiest years, Nicole's vulnerability often resurfaced in subtle ways. In her interviews, her tears at award shows, her trembling voice when speaking of loss. She admitted to battling anxiety and stage fright, particularly after traumatic experiences. Despite her status, she often described herself as shy, fragile, and uncertain. That candor made her beloved, but it also revealed how fame can distort one's sense of self. Then in 2014, tragedy struck again. Nicole's beloved father, Dr. Anthony Kidman, died suddenly from a fall in Singapore. It was a devastating blow. He had been her moral compass, her confidant, and the one who kept her grounded amid chaos. She described the grief as a hole that never closes. Her mother's health began to decline soon after, forcing Nicole to confront the painful cycle of loss once again. Through it all, she maintained grace in public, but in private, she was still that same introspective girl from Sydney, longing for stability. The glamour, the awards, the success, they all felt fragile, temporary. Her emotional depth, which made her such a powerful actress, also made her susceptible to heartbreak. She once said, "I feel things too deeply. That's my gift and my curse." In an industry obsessed with youth and perfection, Nicole also faced the unspoken cruelty of aging. Roles for women over 40 diminished, and she began to confront the fear that she might fade from relevance. But instead of retreating, she defied Hollywood's expectations, choosing bold, unflattering, emotionally brutal roles that mirrored her own truths. Behind the spotlight, Nicole Kidman's life was not a fairy tale. It was a testament to survival. Her beauty masked a storm of vulnerability, her success a history of pain, yet she never turned bitter. She turned inward, transforming trauma into art, heartbreak into empathy. Her story reminds us that even the brightest stars cast shadows, and that sometimes it's within those shadows that true humanity shines. Nicole Kidman's resilience was not born from victory, but from her ability to keep loving, keep creating, and keep believing, even when everything she loved seemed to slip away.
By the time Nicole Kidman reached her late 40s, she had become an icon, not just of film, but of endurance. She had survived Hollywood's cruelty, heartbreak, and reinvention. Yet as the years passed, the soft glow of fame began to change. It no longer dazzled her. It haunted her in subtler, quieter ways. The industry she had given her youth to was evolving, and not always kindly. Hollywood's love affair with older women was fickle, almost cruel. Scripts grew fewer, offers more selective. Nicole, who once stood at the center of every casting dream, now had to fight for stories with depth. She refused to fade quietly, but each role came with the painful awareness that time was passing, that the girl who once embodied ingenue charm was now playing mothers, widows, and women marked by loss. And yet, that was her power. She leaned into the melancholy, transforming her own aging into art. Films like Rabbit Hole and Lion captured her personal grief.
the loss of children, the ache of motherhood, the yearning for home. Because they weren't performances, they were confessions. Each tear felt lived in. Each silence carried the weight of someone who endured too much and survived anyway. But even as audiences admired her maturity, Nicole often spoke of an inner loneliness that never quite left her. "I still feel like the girl sitting alone in the corner," she once said. The glamour of red carpets, the golden statues, the applause, they all faded when she returned home to quiet nights far from the noise of Hollywood. Fame had become an echo, loud but hollow. Her father's sudden death in 2014 deepened that quiet storm. Anthony Kidman had been her emotional anchor, the man who believed in her long before the world did. Losing him shattered her. She admitted, "It broke something in me. I still reach for the phone to call him." In that loss, the fragility of time became painfully clear. She began to step back. Less premieres, more family time in Nashville with her husband Keith Urban and their 2 daughters. But peace, for Nicole, was never simple. Keith's touring schedule, her filming commitments, and the emotional distance fame creates all tested their marriage. There were whispers in tabloids, photographs analyzed, smiles dissected for meaning. Yet through it all, they remained united, bound by mutual pain and deep affection. Nicole often said that love, for her, was an act of faith. Her career entered a reflective stage. Television, once seen as a step down, became her new canvas. Big Little Lies, 2017, reignited her artistry, but it also exposed her personal truth. As Celeste, a woman trapped in an abusive marriage, she revisited old wounds. The physical and emotional toll of that performance was real. She felt "I would go home and just cry. My body didn't know it was acting." Despite critical acclaim and new awards, Nicole began speaking more about mortality, not as fear, but as understanding. She often mused about the fleeting nature of everything: fame, beauty, life itself. She said, "I know what it means to lose. I know how fragile it all is. That's why I hold people close now." As the 2020s unfolded, she became a quieter presence in Hollywood, selective, introspective, almost ethereal. She still acted, still dazzled in films and shows, but there was a calm resignation beneath it. She no longer chased relevance, she embodied timelessness. Yet beneath that serenity, a shadow lingered. The ache of the past, the fear of losing those she loved, and the realization that even with all her success, she was still searching for peace. At 58, Nicole's beauty remained radiant, but it had softened into something wiser, lined with experience, glowing with gentleness. She spoke often about her mother's declining health, her daughters growing up, and the meaning of legacy. She said, "I just want to leave behind love, not fame, not perfection, just love." And yet there was melancholy in her eyes, a subtle awareness that every light eventually dims. The applause fades, the cameras stop flashing, and the world moves on to newer faces. But Nicole Kidman's decline was not of failure or obscurity, but a slow, graceful descent into something deeper: acceptance. Her later years weren't marked by scandal or collapse, but with reflection, a quiet storm of gratitude and grief, of looking back on a life that was both blessed and bruised. She had been the ingenue, the lover, the queen, the survivor, and now she was the storyteller. For all her triumphs, Nicole Kidman's greatest role was herself, a woman who stood in the twilight of fame, unafraid of the dark, still shining softly, beautifully, heartbreakingly against the fading light.
Even as the years move on and Hollywood continues its restless chase for the next young star, the light of Nicole Kidman does not fade, it transforms. She has become something larger than fame itself, a symbol of endurance, reinvention, and emotional truth. Her story is not merely about success in film, but about what it means to live through it all, to love, lose, rise, fall, and keep going. Nicole Kidman's legacy lives in the way she dared to exist fully in an industry that often prefers women to disappear once they have outlived the myth of youth. She refused to be erased. When the world told her she was too tall, too porcelain, too different, she built a career out of being precisely those things. Her fragility became her weapon, her pain, her performance. The world remembers her not only for the shimmering gowns or Oscar moments, but for the way she made emotion visible, raw, trembling, real. In the hours, she wore Virginia Woolf's despair like a second skin, embodying the quiet ache of a mind unraveling. In Moulin Rouge, she captured the ecstasy of love and the inevitability of loss. And in Big Little Lies, she gave voice to the silent suffering of women everywhere who endure behind closed doors. Each role was a mirror, reflecting something profoundly human, the parts of ourselves we hide, the feelings we're told to suppress. That became Nicole's gift. She made vulnerability cinematic. She showed that strength isn't about defiance, it's about survival. Off-screen, her legacy deepens. She has used her fame as a force for good, championing women's rights, supporting mental health awareness, and funding humanitarian work across the world. She became a producer, not just to extend her career, but to build platforms for others, particularly women, to tell stories long ignored by the mainstream. For young actors, Nicole Kidman represents the possibility of longevity through authenticity. She never bowed to trends, never betrayed her instincts. Each decade of her career was marked by reinvention, from the wide-eyed ingenue in Dead Calm to the fearless artist of Eyes Wide Shut, to the global powerhouse of The Hours and The Undoing. Her transformation wasn't cosmetic, it was spiritual. She grew with every heartbreak, every risk, every moment of silence between applause. And that's the true tragedy and triumph of Nicole's legacy. Her art came from wounds the world could not see. The pain of broken love, the ache of motherhood, the loneliness of fame. All of it fed her performances until truth and fiction blurred. Watching her was not like watching a character. It was like watching a soul unravel and rebuild itself. Even now in her late 50s, Nicole Kidman walks red carpets not as a star chasing relevance, but as a survivor who has earned her place in cinema's pantheon. The younger generation looks up to her. Florence Pugh, Saoirse Ronan, Anya Taylor-Joy all cite her as an influence. They see in her not just beauty or talent, but courage. The courage to stay soft in a hard world. And for audiences, she remains a timeless figure, elegant yet wounded, luminous yet human. There's something eternal in her presence, a sense that no matter how the film industry changes, Nicole Kidman will always stand as its poetic conscience. The reminder that acting is not about pretending, but about feeling. Culturally, her name has become shorthand for grace under fire. She is both muse and mentor, both Hollywood royalty and the girl who still feels like an outsider. In her interviews,
She often laughs softly when asked how she wants to be remembered. As someone who loved deeply, she says. But what she rarely adds, and what history will surely note, is that she also lived deeply. Her legacy is written not just in film archives or award speeches, but in the hearts of those who saw themselves in her fragility, the dreamers, the lonely, the survivors. For them, Nicole Kidman is not just an actress, she's a story of light surviving through pain, of beauty born from loss, of grace that refuses to fade. She will forever be remembered as the woman who dared to make sadness beautiful, who turned heartbreak into art, and who taught the world that even when the curtain falls, the soul, if it's brave enough, continues to shine. Because that's what Nicole Kidman is, and always will be. The light that remains after everything else fades.
Nicole Kidman's story is not simply one of awards, red carpets, or cinematic triumphs. It is, above all, a story of human endurance, of heartache turned into art, of a life lived in full intensity behind a veil of public fascination. We often see only the glitter, the gowns, the flashing cameras, the accolades, but behind that luminous exterior lies the true story. A woman who has known profound loss, deep vulnerability, and moments of soul-crushing loneliness, and yet has emerged time and again with her essence intact. Her journey reminds us that even the brightest stars endure shadows. Fame, which the world often equates with happiness, was for Nicole both a platform and a prison. Early love and personal tragedies cast long echoes over her life. Divorces, failed romances, and the quiet grief of private struggles shaped the woman we see today. There were moments when the applause felt hollow, when the red carpets were cold underfoot, and when the world's admiration could not fill the emptiness that lingered behind her eyes. Yet from that tension, she created something extraordinary. Performances so authentic, they invite audiences to inhabit her experiences, to feel the pulse of her vulnerability as if it were their own. Her triumphs were never superficial. An Oscar, Golden Globes, and countless accolades are impressive, but they are merely punctuation marks in a life defined by resilience, emotional courage, and the relentless pursuit of truth in storytelling. Nicole's artistry lies in her capacity to transform personal suffering into universal resonance. She taught the world that heartbreak can be beautiful, that pain can be transcendent, and that even the most public life is anchored in deeply private human realities. As she continues to navigate her late 50s, Nicole Kidman stands as a figure of inspiration not just to aspiring actors, but to anyone seeking to understand the balance between vulnerability and strength. She embodies the paradox of life itself, the ability to be simultaneously visible and hidden, celebrated and misunderstood, adored and yet lonely. Her story urges us to look beyond appearances, to consider the unseen weight each person carries, and to recognize the courage it takes simply to keep going. Nicole Kidman is, in the end, not just a Hollywood legend or an artistic icon, she is a mirror, reflecting both the beauty and fragility inherent in being human. Her legacy is a reminder that true greatness is measured not by applause or accolades, but by the capacity to endure, to evolve, and to transform personal struggles into something that touches the lives of countless others. Her life teaches a profound lesson. Even those who seem untouchable, those who shine with otherworldly brilliance, are human. They feel, they suffer, they stumble, and they rise. Nicole Kidman is a testament to that truth. Her films are archives of emotion. Her public appearances windows into grace under pressure, and her personal journey a silent testament to resilience. As the curtain falls on each act of her life, the audience is left not just admiring the star on screen, but understanding the human being behind the legend. Someone who has loved deeply, lost profoundly, and lived courageously. Nicole Kidman's story is an invitation to witness the fragility and strength intertwined within us all, a call to honor the human experience in its entirety. And so, when we think of her, let it not only be as a performer of extraordinary skill, but as a living embodiment of what it means to be human. A woman who shines, who breaks, and who rises again, teaching us that even legends carry hearts that beat, wounds that ache, and spirits that endure.